Hello and welcome to another video. Today's video is titled what do you do if you screw up in law enforcement? So I know that this is going to relate to a lot of you who are currently working in law enforcement, and then possibly those that are trying to get in and say, man, what if we make mistakes? Is your career over? What do you do, etc.? But as a college professor, I almost have to always start with a story so that you understand why I'm creating these videos, right? It's to save your career, hopefully avoid future liability, future lawsuits, future getting fired from your job. So we're gonna start with this story. Whistlin Diesel, you can look it up, is a YouTuber, and he does all kinds of funny things like crashing school buses, and he bought a bunch of land, so he buys brand new cars and destroys them. It's an interesting YouTube channel to watch. If you haven't watched it, I recommend you check it out. The guy uses sense of humor and certain wittiness to bring up certain issues to our attention that I think we can learn from. So the first scenario, Whistlin Diesel just did a video on it, and what it is some kid in high school decides to ride his tractor. He's 14 years old, decides to ride his tractor to school, and the police, the sheriff's department, ends up pulling him over, and they impounded his truck, the tractor. And I want you to think about this for a second. So you have cars on the roads that are registered. You have to pay an insurance. You have to pay registration fees every year on the car, and maybe do a smog. Then you have tractors. In the United States, it is not illegal to drive a tractor on a public roadway. Now, this wasn't in California. California, we require them to install like a triangle, which basically makes them exempt on the roadway. It's kind of like the Amish in certain states get to ride horses and carriages and all that kind of stuff. But in the back of those carriages, they have the little triangle. Anyway, back to my story. So this 14-year-old kid gets his tractor impounded. He rode his tractor to school, and the sheriff's office is not telling him what is charged with, what is the section that he violated. Basically, they towed the tractor to an impound yard, and now they want his family to pay $300 and some to get that out of the tow yard with no charges. And so as Whistlin Diesel is telling the story, I'm thinking, as a former police officer, I'm thinking, how does a sheriff's department enforce a law that doesn't exist, right? How do they enforce a law that doesn't exist? Again, pay attention. There's a little sneakiness on my part to ask you this. And so as a police officer, as a peace officer, as a deputy sheriff, highway patrol, whatever your role is, before you arrest someone, detain someone, give them a ticket, stop them on a traffic stop, etc., there has to be some type of probable cause, a reasonable suspicion that crime is afoot. Crime is afoot. Crime is happening. And so as I listened to this story, I was thinking, man, what deputy sheriff in his or her right mind, first of all, being that their boss is elected every 4 years, what would make them pull over a kid on a tractor? And there's other issues. I'm not even sure he saw the kid ride the tractor. I'm sure somebody reported it. Hey, we have a freshman in high school. He's 14. He rode his tractor to school today. He doesn't even have a driver's license. So this deputy sheriff impounds the car. So this is where the problem begins. The problem begins as a college professor, former police officer. I'm asking you, what's the violation of the law? Some of you will say, well, he's 14, he's driving without a license. Yeah, but there's no law for farm equipment that requires a person to be of any age. I'm not saying that a baby or a 5-year-old is going to be driving a tractor, but we try to look the other way when it comes to those kind of things, right? Farmers are very important people in our country. They produce our food. They're well respected. They're hardworking. As many say, they work 365 days a year without a day off. And so farmers' kids, and I was one of them, I was driving a tractor when I was 12, 13, 14, and never was stopped by the police. I was hauling different boxes to different fields for workers, on a public roadway, and not once did I ever get pulled over. But anyway, this Whistling Diesel story, you guys can learn from it. Here this kid gets his tractor impounded, so he reaches out to Whistling Diesel and says, hey, you got a lot of viewers, can you put this out to your viewers, because I think it's crazy, my tractor was impounded, my family has to pay $300 and some to get the tractor out of impound, you know, what can you do for me? So Whistling Diesel decides to offer $500 to anyone who can ride their tractor to school this one day. They I don't know if they picked May 15th or whatever. You have to watch the video to get more detail on this. But so these people all get together, and Whistlin Diesel, a very famous YouTuber, is willing to pay each one that brings a tractor to school $500. And if you push your lawnmower to school, then that's another $200. Now, mind you, these tractors could even be those small ones that you use to drive or to mow large pieces of land, you know, cut down the grass and large pieces of land. So it doesn't have to be a full-size tractor. It could be a little tiny, you know, John Deere that you see at Home Depot, in front of Home Depot or Lowe's. So anyway, this thing gains attention, right? And now people, Whistling Diesel tells his viewers, hey, start calling the sheriff's office and inundate them with calls like, is it illegal to ride a tractor to school? And the answer is no, right? And so the sheriff's office contacts Whistling Diesel and he's asking him, hey, is there any way you can ask your viewers to stop calling us? We're getting inundated with thousands of calls. People are like, you know, asking that question, is it illegal to ride a tractor to school? And the answer is no, right? So no, hence no violation of law, hence that deputy sheriff that stopped this kid or ended up towing his tractor had no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, no violation of the law. So how do you fix that? And that's why you're watching this video. You're like asking me, Brian, when I screw up, how do I fix it? The first thing you need to do is accept that you screwed up. Sometimes it's hard. Peace officers have big egos. People who want to become police officers have big egos. If their feelings are hurt, sometimes they let that get in the way. They allow the emotion to get in the way of doing the right thing, right? Yes, you're going to learn a lot of life lessons along the way, but do you dump your friends every time they make you mad? The answer is no, right? There's lessons learned there. You apologize, you forgive, and you forward. But as a peace officer, the longer you wait to ratify a situation, to fix a situation, the more it mushrooms out of control, and the less you will be able to do about it. In the beginning, you can take care of business, but after the ball is rolling, it's very hard to fix it. I'm going to share a quick story with you. So I'm working patrol, and I was assigned to do special traffic enforcement, ram and jam. All these gang members and, you know, other people who wanted to create problems in our city were coming there on the weekends to do some cruising, and the chief and the upper administration asked me and others in special units to go out there and enforce the law, write as many tickets as possible to basically discourage them from coming into our city and creating shootings and stabbings, other crime. It was insane, out of control. So I pulled over a carload of gangbangers, like six gang members in this lowrider car, and basically I'm walking out there. It's a Friday night, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening on the radio, and I ask for backup. No backups available. I pull them over. They all look like they're gang members, all 6 of them in the car. So I walk up and, very cautious, officer safety, I order everyone to put their hands up. The people in the back seat, they got their hands plastered on the back, on the front seat headrests. The people in the front seat, their hands are up so I can see them. I walk up to the car and I start talking to the driver, and the driver is on probation and he's searchable for property, stolen property, drugs, etc. So I decide, as soon as the backup officer arrives, to pull him out of the car to do a pat-down search of him for stolen property. I mean, he's on probation and he's searchable, and he knows this. So I get him out of the car. I go to handcuff him, and it appeared to me that he dropped a bindle, right? Looked like he had something in his hand. As soon as I went to handcuff him, he dropped a bindle. And so I'm on it. I'm like, hey, what'd you drop? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, you just dropped something. I'm thinking it's a bundle of drugs, right? Very common. People are carrying drugs in their mouth and their hands, whatever. As soon as they're confronted, they want to toss the evidence, right? So I take him aside behind the car. I have the backup officer watch him. I go look at on the front area where he dropped it. I saw the bundle. I open it up, and it's a list of all the judges' names and phone numbers and cell numbers and home addresses. Now, this is confidential information. Only law enforcement is allowed to have that kind of information, right? Where the judges live, where their phone numbers, that kind of stuff. I mean, how would this guy get a hold of that information? And so I pretty much told him, hey, I'm gonna, book you for possession of stolen property. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're making this stuff up. I said, I'm not making this stuff up at all. You had it on your hand. When I went to go handcuff you, you dropped it. He's like, man, you cops are corrupt, etc., etc. And so I called the sergeant just to kind of let him know what's going on. They called a paddy wagon to transport this guy to jail. And as we started switching cuffs, I go to put my cuffs back in my cuff container, and it turns out that I'm missing this piece of paper that I use not to let the cuffs, rattle when I do my approach. You want to do a stealth approach, officer safety always. And so I start thinking, where did that piece of paper go? I remember that I had gotten it from one of the desks in one of the substations. I had folded it up and I had put it in between the double handcuff case so they wouldn't rattle. And so then it hit me, okay? And I hope if you're following the story, it just hit you. The paper he dropped, that was my paper. It came out of my handcuff case. And so quickly, I jumped out of the car. I told the sergeant what happened. I ordered the people that were going to transport him to jail to release him, and pretty much used a section called 849B, subsection B as in boy, out of the California Penal Code to basically release him on the spot. Because I realized that I made a mistake. I made an arrest believing that he was in possession of stolen property. It turned out that stolen property came from me, the police officer, the peace officer. So the sergeant wasn't happy, but I did the right thing, right? I did the right thing. I released him. And of course, he was, calling me every name in the book, put him back in the car, gave him a warning for the speed and other violations he had in his car, and he left, right? Now think about this. What if I had let them go ahead and take this guy to jail, and this guy gets booked on false allegations? False allegations. This guy is going through the court process. This guy is going to complain. Attorneys talk, prosecutors talk. Eventually it goes back to your department as an internal affairs investigation, and eventually you will get fired. And so I hope from this video you learn a few valuable things. Yes, you will make some mistakes. There's no doubt that you will make some mistakes. And the way to fix those mistakes is as soon as you make the mistake, as soon as you realize, hey, I made a mistake, you admit it and you fix it. If we go back to the first incident that I started talking about on Whistlin Diesel, that deputy sheriff, when you contacted the kid, number one, he should have checked the law to find out what the law did this kid violate. Number two, if he did make a mistake, like I made one, and he arrested the kid and he impounded the thing, he realized, oh my God, I shouldn't have done this, then he should have fixed it right away. Notified his supervisor, hey, I messed up. I ended up impounding this kid's car. Turns out, I shouldn't have done that. Now, because of all the publicity around this video, a very recent video on Whistlin Diesel's channel, the officer, deputy, got fired, lost his job. Now, that's just a rumor, not confirmed, but it's on the video that he was let go. Basically, he used poor judgment. In a community that's appears that's strong farming community, those of you who are working with these farmers, you need to really leave them alone, right? They work super hard. They put food on your table, my table, other families' tables, and it's up to you as a peace officer to fully understand this. You're not dealing with gang members, terrorists, burglars, thieves. No, you're dealing with farmers. And so that's another thing that you need to learn, some common sense when you're working in law enforcement. What type of person are you dealing with, right? Because it determines your response and so forth. Okay, I hope you learned something from this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Share it with other people who may need a little lesson on ethics and what to do when you screw up. All right, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Be safe.